What is going on, everybody? We are back, the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. I'm your host, Marcus Whitman, aka That Franchise Guy. You guys know me from YouTube. Well, we have taken a brief hiatus here from this podcast because we were doing my deep dive series on YouTube, and those were effectively podcasts. And they took up a lot of time. Didn't have time to do these podcasts, but we are back. And in my opinion, we're back with a bit of a grand slam. I'm really excited about today's show. We are going to go through just kind of the state of running backs in the NFL. It's something we've talked about a lot over the offseason, but with Zeke holding out, with Melvin Gordon holding out, with Todd Gurley's injury situation, like we got a lot to talk about with the state of the running back position. Then I've got a cool topic here, just the preseason watch list. We are 3 days removed from really the kickoff of the real NFL preseason. So we're going to go through each individual team and really talk about, each one's going to vary a little bit, but basically what am I watching for each team? Like the biggest, not necessarily question mark, but an undrafted free agent that I really want to see, or a position battle, or, one player that has question marks. A lot of just the big storyline for each NFL team, something to maybe direct your attention to as you're watching these preseason games. And then we're going to open up the mailbag. I got a bunch of questions from you guys on Twitter, on Instagram. So we got a full show here. Quick plug before we do that. I guess 2 quick plugs. This podcast now will be resuming twice a week. Mondays and Thursdays is the plan, and that's going to carry on into the season. So the Monday show will be more of a reflective podcast, talking about what we saw for the games, and then the Thursday podcast will be more of a predictive podcast. And this is all going to grow as we do it. And I'm also potentially going to make them video podcasts. That's something I'm still in the works of. For now, though, these will be uploaded on YouTube, but also as podcasts on Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. If there is a platform that you want these on that it is not currently on, do just let me know, whether it be here on YouTube or on Twitter, and I will look into seeing if I can get it on that platform. The other thing, use promo code FranchiseGuy on SeatGeek. It is really the easiest way for you guys to support this podcast, my channel, whatever it may be. If you're buying a ticket, whether it be a concert, a baseball game, a football game, whatever it may be, just do it on SeatGeek. You're going to get the best prices there anyway. Create an account, use promo code FranchiseGuy. You'll save $20. I get a little chunk of the change, and we all win. So do that if you want to support everything here. And that's all I got to say. Let's go ahead and get into it. We mentioned that we are going to talk about the state of the running back in the NFL. And a big topic through the offseason has been that running back doesn't really matter. And it's not even that running back doesn't matter. It's more about how replaceable that the running back position is. No position in the entire league has more talent available, whether it be through the draft or street free agents, or undrafted free agents, like whatever it may be. We see 5 to 8 high quality starting running backs, I would say, starting caliber plus enter the league every year. And that makes it a big problem for guys like Ezekiel Elliott and Melvin Gordon, who are at the top of the position. So let's just talk about these case by case, starting though with what Le'Veon Bell did. And, Le'Veon Bell held out, and the Steelers kind of called his bluff. And they were like, you know what? You are a running back, and we're not going to pay you. And the Steelers are a smart organization, and they handled that the right way. It was too bad that Le'Veon Bell did not show up. Frankly, he should have on that franchise tag. But it was what it was. A good organization there in Pittsburgh, a really smart front office, did not cave and pay the running back. Now, Bell had some off-the-field issues. He had suffered a torn ACL, did have some injury concerns, some longevity concerns. But all in all, I think Bell also had a bit of a case to hold out. He was one of the 3 best running backs in the NFL and, had behaved himself. He was being a professional and really, other than injury, had no reason to say that he wasn't going to show up and be a big factor for his team. Now let's take a look at Ezekiel Elliott. And I didn't get too mad about Le'Veon Bell. I did say you should take the money and go play, but I understood it from his perspective. I think what he did was justified. Ezekiel Elliott has really, pissed me off to no end. He is now one of my least favorite players in the NFL because he is so full of himself. I think he has an agent that is talking him up, that he is surrounding himself with the wrong people. He's doing a lot of things that really rub me the wrong way here. So let's just take a look at Zeke's career. He gets drafted 4th overall. And by the sounds of it, Jerry Jones really pushed for that pick. Jerry Jones loves this player more than pretty much anyone on his team. Most people had said the Cowboys should draft Jalen Ramsey, a blue-chip defensive prospect, over a running back, 4th overall. But Jerry stuck his neck out for Zeke. Kind of jeopardized some of the future of the team. And by doing that, and not only did he jeopardize the future of the team, but he made Zeke a very highly paid running back. He immediately became one of the 10 highest paid backs in the league. So Zeke's been paid. He's not like Le'Veon Bell, who was a 2nd-round pick, who hadn't made much money in the first 4 years of his career. Zeke has made bank. I don't know the exact numbers, but I know it's over $15 million. It's a lot more than Le'Veon Bell had made. So for one, you've got an owner that has stuck your neck out for you. And it wasn't just at the draft. Keep in mind, Zeke's been in really countless off-the-field issues. I think he's had 3. Again, I have a hard time keeping track. I know last year he was facing serious investigations for domestic violence. There was also an issue where he just took a girl's, ripped a girl's shirt off, in a parade. Ultimately, to me, that's why he got suspended, because he's just a child in a man's body. You're one of the faces of the NFL. You can't come out here and just rip a girl's shirt off in public just because you're horny. Dude, grow up. That has got to be the message that they sent to Zeke Elliott. But despite all that, Jerry Jones went to war for you because you, at that point, were Jerry Jones' guy. He went head-to-head with Jerry Jones and the rest, with Roger Goodell and the rest of the owners in the NFL, and really jeopardized his reputation as the most respectable owner in the NFL. I don't know if there's much argument there. I think that Jerry Jones is one of the most respectable owners in the league. And he really stuck his neck out for you. And that all settled. You came in, you played well, and then you get in trouble again. You get in a fight with a bouncer. There's investigations again. You just can't stay out of the headlines for the wrong reasons. And you get cleared. You are ready to come report to clinic. I don't know why I call it clinic, but you then hold out. You jump in line ahead of your teammates. Guys like Jalen Smith, who's not made as much money as you. Dak Prescott, your quarterback, who's made maybe an eighth of what you have made, Zeke. You're jumping in line of him. Amari Cooper, who you guys weren't anything without Amari Cooper last year. Also Byron Jones. So you're jumping in line of 4 guys who their contracts are actually expiring this year. Keep in mind, Zeke Elliott has another year left on his deal. He is holding out 2 years before his contract is up. So you're pissing off your teammates. You've now pissed off your owner, which is the biggest thing and why I think you are an idiot, Zeke. Because up to this point, Jerry Jones has gone to war for you. If you just show up and just be an adult, your time's going to come. You are in the best possible situation with, not just your team itself, with a team that's going to help you succeed, but an owner that is willing to pay a running back. An owner that was willing to draft you 4th overall. So just shut up, show up and play. I can't stand him. I think he's a 9-year-old kid stuck in one of the most athletic bodies in America. So he's driving me insane. And dude, you're a running back. You are a running back. Just shut up and go to practice. Now let's talk about Melvin Gordon, who I understand his case. He was a mid-first round pick. It's not that he hasn't made money, but he has done things the right way, Melvin Gordon. He had a bad rookie year. He has dealt with injuries, but he practices hard. He stays out of trouble. He's a consistent player. He's dealt with a move. His organization has moved. And he's like, guys, I kind of want a new contract. You threw that 5th-year option on me. Is $5 million. I know I'm worth more than that. I know I'm a running back, but, like, come on. Like, I've done a lot for this team. And he has. But I feel so bad for him because this is where I come in with the take that a guy like Melvin Gordon should really be someone that leads the charge in the collective bargaining that is coming up to say, we running backs really get kind of screwed here. Not only is it a position that is being devalued, but, you know, we go through hell out there. We get beat up. You know, we get the ball 22 times. A lot of those times are between the tackles, getting hit by 240-pound linebackers all the time, or 300-pound defensive tackles. And it is an injury-prone position, and that's part of why it is such a, you know, replaceable position. Is a lot of these guys, in Todd Gurley's case, as we've seen, do get hurt. But Melvin Gordon's just kind of SOL. I get it from his case. I get why he wants his money, and I totally get it from the Chargers' case. They have two cheap running backs, Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson, who can offer 90 to 95% of what they had in Melvin Gordon. And they have offered Melvin Gordon about a $10 million contract, which I think is what my initial reaction was, you know, for the Chargers, is offer him a $10 million contract, but there's no point in the Chargers trading him. Maybe it gets done. I've doubted that trades for star players would get done in recent years, and they have. But the Chargers, again, like we said with the Steelers, they're a pretty damn smart front office. There's problems with their ownership and questions about the team as a whole from an operational standpoint, but the front office itself is top five from a team building perspective. And they know that what's the point in trading one of our best players for a 4th-round pick? Like, either he shows up or he doesn't. If he doesn't, he's going to miss out on his money. If he does, sweet. We have a slight upgraded running back. But the Chargers, I don't think, are going to trade him. So there's no leverage for Melvin Gordon. And that really sucks for him. And this comes back to what I said about the CBA. He's the kind of guy that could lead the charge on this. You need a big-name guy to really lead the charge on this. Running backs coming out of college should not get the 4-year contract with that 5th-year option for rookies. Running backs should be an exception. And, you know, there might get complications with, oh, you're a fullback or you're an H-back, like whatever. Figure it out. Running backs, if you're a first-round pick, should have a 3-year contract with an expensive 4th-year option, like an $8 million 4th-year option. And if you're drafted 2nd round and on, it should be a 3-year contract. Because these guys deserve. There's a lot more cases like Melvin Gordon than there are for Ezekiel Elliott. For guys that really are really good players, good humans, and they deserve to get that second contract before their body goes through hell. Melvin Gordon will play 5 years in the NFL before he hits free agency, and that's if he doesn't get franchise tagged. So, and maybe that's something you could bargain for as well, is that you shouldn't be able to franchise tag a guy off of a rookie contract. I really think that, you know, I've been calling for that for 2 years, but it's becoming more and more evident now that somebody, and it's not going to be me, you know, little old, you know, C-level YouTuber here is not going to go and rewrite the NFL CBA. But Melvin Gordon and his agent could maybe pair up with Saquon Barkley and get something, you know, really impactful done for these guys. And I usually am pro-organization, but I do feel for these running backs because they're really talented football players, and they do get screwed compared to the rest of the NFL. Obviously, they're not going to walk away broke, but a lot of these guys get concussions. They're walking away with knee issues. Like, if anyone should be making more money, it's probably the running backs down the road. So, you know, I'm not going to, you know, sit here and cry for these professional athletes, but I do think that something needs to change. And in Melvin Gordon's case, I really think he's going to just end up having to play. I think he might hold out the first couple weeks of the season and see if, you know, maybe the Chargers, if they are not able to run the ball with Jackson and Eckler, but they will be able to. That's the problem. But maybe they do struggle and he has a little bit of leverage. But unfortunately, that's just not the nature of the position. So that's enough time on the running backs. A lot of thoughts I had to get out there. Let's go ahead and move on to my preseason watch list. And This is, it's not a definitive list. These are just kind of the big things I'm looking for at each team. A lot of these are low-level, undrafted free agents. Effectively, what this list is things that can change the scope of the franchise in some regard down the road, whether it's this year or in years to come. So let's just get into it. You'll kind of start to feel out what I'm talking about here. It's just a watch list. If you turn on a game for any of these teams, this is the number one thing I will be looking for. So we're going to start in the AFC North with the Baltimore Ravens. And the biggest thing I'm looking for here, other than just watching Lamar Jackson and seeing him throw, I was going to put down watching Lamar Jackson and what this offense looks like, but I really think that they're going to hide a lot of the things that they're going to do with Lamar Jackson, so evaluating him in the preseason is almost pointless. So I went with the linebacker group as a whole, and that actually includes the edge rushers here, but the number one guy I have my eye on is Kenny Young. He was a fourth-round pick out of UCLA a couple of years ago. This team lost C.J. Mosley in free agency. He was the captain of that defense at the middle linebacker position, and that's a big, important position there. And they do have Patrick Owasu, good player, a little undersized. To me, a guy that is probably a number 2 linebacker, better in coverage. I mean, he's a good player, don't get me wrong, but I don't necessarily see the upside there with Owasu. Kenny Young is kind of that high-profile athlete that maybe can emerge here. And Baltimore's done an outstanding job developing guys really on the entire defense, whether it be in the front seven or in the secondary. And Kenny Young, coming out of UCLA, a team, a college that has produced a lot of really talented NFL linebackers. Anthony Barr, Miles Jack, Jayon Brown for the Titans. More of a similar path to a guy like Kenny Young who could break out here in a second or third season. So can Kenny Young take control of that middle linebacker position? And what does he look like for that Ravens defense? Because they lost a lot, but as long as that linebacker position can be steady, it's still going to be a pretty damn good defense, but they do need that to get figured out. And then also the edge rushers as a whole there as well. They've got a bunch of bodies there, and they're losing Zadarius Smith. They are also losing Terrell Suggs. So does Matt Judon step up as this team's number 1? Does Tim Williams emerge? Does Tyus Bowser take a step up? What do you get from Jalen Ferguson? Now, that's all going to be sorting itself out as the season goes on, but it will be interesting to see who's starting with the ones in preseason, who looks good, and, that linebacking group as a whole, whether it be their edge outside linebackers or their inside linebackers, that's a pivotal point for that Ravens team. So excited to see how that all plays out. The Pittsburgh Steelers, Deontay Johnson and this wide receiving core. Deontay Johnson, this was one of my better draft calls. In my last mock draft of the season, we did a 3-round mock draft, and I had the Steelers taking Deontay Johnson with the pick that they gave up for Antonio Brown because he fits the mold that the Steelers look for in these mid-round wide receivers with guys like Emmanuel Sanders, with obviously Antonio Brown, and now I look at Deontay Johnson, and can he be an impact rookie as this team's route-running wide receiver, whether that be in the slot or on the outside, in the Antonio Brown role? And what does he look like in the preseason? I loved his tape. He was arguably the best separator in the entire class as far as quickness, release, and route running is concerned. His hands were suspect, but we talk about this a lot, that I'd rather you be able to separate than catch everything. Now, there's a line. If you're a guy like in Indianapolis, his name's escaping me, we just tweeted about him. What is his name there for Indianapolis? Chester Rogers. He's dropped like 10% of his, it was over 10% of his targets over the last 2 seasons. That's not cool. You can't drop 10%. There can't be a 90% chance that when I throw you the ball, you're going to catch it. I don't think that's going to be Deontay Johnson. He just might not be Adam Thielen, and he's going to out physical you for every catch, but he's going to be more open than a guy like Adam Thielen. So I look at Deontay Johnson. If not him, who is stepping up? Because you got Juju there. He's going to have a fantastic season. But does Washington, the Oklahoma State kid, step up? Does Ryan Switzer step up? Who's going to be there? Or is it they signed Moncrief, right? Yeah, they signed Moncrief. I don't expect much there. So I'm keeping an eye on who's starting there at wide receiver for the Steelers. And if it's Deontay Johnson, I'm getting really freaking excited. Next, we got the Cleveland Browns. We got another wide receiver here. The Browns have a loaded roster. They don't, from a roster standpoint, have a lot of question marks. Their question mark is, over the course of the season, how does their coach and culture hold up? And can they overcome being the Cleveland Browns? But Antonio Callaway is a guy that is going to play a lot in the preseason. He is a troubled young kid. Just focus issues, whether it be on the field or off the field. If he can have a good camp and become this team's number 2 wide receiver on the outside, obviously Jarvis Landry is the number 2 wide receiver, but these teams are running 3 wide sets, 11 personnel, usually over 60% of the time. So for all intents and purposes, the number 2 wide receiver is the other outside guy. Antonio Callaway has really high upside as a deep threat. He's got the rack ability to catch the ball in the screen game as well. Like, he could be a guy that really blows the ceiling open for this offense. And I just want to see him. You can never get a full evaluation from the preseason because they're going against backups. A lot of it's just fluff writing, coach speak, all that stuff. But, Antonio Callaway is the kind of guy that you'll be able to tell, like, probably in the preseason if he's kind of got it all put together. So excited to see what he can do. And then another wide receiver here in the AFC North, the Cincinnati Bengals, this poor team. I talked them up in my deep dives. That take is out the window. This team is pretty much on a hot streak here for competing for the number 1 overall pick. Their offseason has been an absolute disaster here. They lost their first-round pick, Jonah Williams, which was the centerpiece of my optimism for this team. Clint Bowling retires. That offensive line was in shape to be better this year, and now it's going to be miserable yet again. And then A.J. Green gets hurt again, their best offensive player. So it's going to be a train wreck, most likely in Cincinnati. It's I feel bad for Andy Dalton because he's a guy that if you do put those pieces like we just mentioned around him, he can be a starting caliber quarterback, and he can even play at a level that can win playoff games, honestly. But it's not going to happen this year. But one guy that I'm really keeping my eye on for this preseason is a receiver they extended last year. He's been their kick returner, Alex Erickson. Really good dude, but that prototypical slot wide receiver, he's actually a little bigger than the prototype, but he's quick, good hands, really nice blocker, and he's going to have a really nice opportunity here because they have not really addressed this wide receiver position as some of these guys have been aged out a little more, and he's just kind of slowly stayed there, climbed the depth chart, got a little extension. Just keep an eye on him as a guy that could have a 60, 70 reception season, 800 yards, 5-6 touchdowns, and just be kind of a good story there. So keep an eye on Alex Erickson. They were able to do that with Tyler Boyd last year. So it could be Erickson and Boyd there in Cincinnati. Onto the AFC East, the New York Jets, my guy, Blake freaking Cashman. Did not take long. It was probably the first or second camp report for the New York Jets that Blake Cashman's taking reps with the ones. And I was just expressionless. I had a first-round grade on him. I caught flack for it. I said that you can't really distinguish Blake. I was this high. I said Blake Cashman, Devin Bush, Devin White. The line is very thin. And I think the Jets got one of the steals of the century in Blake Cashman. The sky is the absolute roof for him. I mean, there was times, call it a stereotype here, but there was times in college he looked like maybe Bobby Wagner, but more Luke Kuechly. He's almost the exact same size as Luke Kuechly. And he ran a 4.5. The dude's a freak athlete. I did a ton of Minnesota games for PFF this year, and Blake Cashman just popped. His just command of the defense, as a captain of the defense, his coverage ability with that surprising athleticism, his quickness to man up on running backs and tight ends. This guy could be an elite linebacker in this league, and it took him like not even a week to take first-team reps from Avery Williamson, right? Or I always get the two Tennessee linebackers. One of them went to the Jets. I think it's Williamson is on the Jets. Yeah, because Woodyard is still there with Tennessee. So Avery Williamson he's a damn good linebacker. He's like a top 15 off-ball linebacker. You know, the Jets did not need Blake Cashman. They obviously liked him, but they're like, well, we got Avery, we got CJ Mosley, we just gave a bunch of money. Like, I guess we'll take Blake Cashman here in the 5th round if no one wants him. And he's already, like, competing as their best linebacker. So, I just want to see him play. And I cannot wait for him to prove all these people wrong. I was pretty early on this guy, and I'm thinking I might be right here. I think this is going to be one of the steals, you know, like a Stephon Diggs in the 6th round. You know, one of those type of deals where we're sitting here in 4 years like, what the heck? How did he not go in the 1st or the 2nd round? This guy, all he does is make plays on defense. You do have injury concerns there with Cashman, but I don't know. Stayed pretty healthy at Minnesota. I don't know. The Buffalo Bills, David Sills. Here was another tweet I had recently that said David Sills greater than the Stanford kid for the Eagles. That was a 2nd-round pick. Arcega-Whiteside. A lot of people liked Arcega-Whiteside. I couldn't really tell the difference between him and David Sills. Both big, straight-line runners, not very quick, not the best after the catch, but really good contested catch guys, medium to deep routes. But David Sills is bigger. And I had him a lot higher than Arcega-Whiteside on my draft board, but David Sills ends up going undrafted. He's not particularly slow. He ran like a 4.6. So I'm keeping an eye on him because Josh Allen is also like 6'5". He's got the strongest arm in the NFL. Most of the guys they have there in Buffalo are like John Brown, Robert Foster, Cole Beasley. They're 6 foot, 190-pound guys or less. He needs a guy that's at his eye level, kind of like what we saw with Cam Newton in his prime with Kelvin Benjamin. You know, Kelvin Benjamin can't play football without Cam Newton. But what they could do is just be bigger than everyone and just out-physical everyone. And David Sills, I'm keeping an eye on him in the preseason because not only do I expect him to make this team as an undrafted free agent, but he very well could start here. Depending on how John Brown, you know, he hasn't been a model of health over his career. He did have a nice year in Baltimore. And Robert Foster, he's no guarantee. He's a good young player. Should win the job. But David Sills is right there with those guys, I think, competing. Young player, definitely has a lot to prove, being an undrafted guy. But I'm keeping my eye on David Sills, out of West Virginia, an undrafted free agent for the Buffalo Bills, a team that desperately needs playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. The New England Patriots, there's a lot of names here. Like, they just have so much depth and so many guys that are at some point gonna play a role. You know, you could throw out names. Braxton Berrios is a guy that I'd keep an eye on. Damien Harris, 3rd-round running back out of Alabama. I think he'll play some this year because Sony Michel, they want to keep him healthy for the playoffs. You're going to be monitoring what's going on with this wide receiver room, what's going on with the edge room. There's a lot to watch for this Patriots team, but what's going to be the most fun to watch and probably the most impactful on the future of this team is Jarrett Stidham. And you never want to write a guy on or off at the quarterback position based on preseason performance. But you will be able to see a certain competency, right? And, you know, I tweeted this out a couple days ago. I said that just a reminder as we head into the preseason that just because your backup goes 5 for 7 for 68 yards, a touchdown, no interception every preseason game does not mean you have one of the best young backups in the league. But it doesn't mean he's bad. There's just a lot of hype that gets generated by those types of performances, but I want to see a certain competency from Jarrett Stidham, and not just the competency. You know, I don't want him to be Landry Jones and come out and throw 4 picks in his first start. Like, yeah, if you're bad in the preseason, that's not good. being good in the preseason is kind of just, step in the right direction. Let's not overreact. But I want to see him on the field with NFL athletes. He's obviously going to play a lot. Like, I guess they have Brian Hoyer there, but I don't expect Tom Brady to play a whole lot in the preseason. So I want to see, what does his arm look like? What's the upside there? How does he sense pressure? What's that mobility look like in a new start here? Because things weren't really great there at Auburn. But he could be the future of this team, and I'm excited to see what Jarrett Stidham looks like. Now we have the Miami Dolphins. Josh Rosen, kind of obvious here, right? They go and trade for him now. They didn't jeopardize their future. But this isn't just the preseason. This is monitoring the camp battle. Brian Flores just came out and said that Josh Rosen's steps behind, the competition's clearly Ryan Fitzpatrick right now. I get it if you want to light a fire under Josh Rosen's ass, and I think that's just kind of what he's doing. But if they actually start Ryan Fitzpatrick, I applauded this team's offseason. I really did, because I always say that, you can't do what the Giants are doing if you want to rebuild. Building a team is all about self-awareness. If you think you can legitimately win a Super Bowl, go for it. If you don't think you have the pieces to win a Super Bowl, you need to do everything you can to get a franchise quarterback. And that's what the Dolphins did. And they also, you need to clear up cap space. That's the other thing. If you're not going to try to win a Super Bowl right now, from a front office team building standpoint, obviously from a coaching player standpoint, you're always going to try your hardest and try to win as many games as you can. But you need to have a certain scope as a general manager. And the Dolphins have had that this offseason. They did not spend money in free agency. They had a lot of bad contracts from the former regime. And they are trying to look to the future here. But you have an opportunity here. You got a top 10 quarterback prospect for a late second-round pick, and you actually got a future second back when you move down to go get Josh Rosen, which is an awesome move. You have opened up such a great opportunity here. But if you start Ryan Fitzpatrick, that sets you back. Because you have a 17-week, let's say 21 weeks of preseason and regular season to really evaluate Josh Rosen as the number one guy. We know what Ryan Fitzpatrick is. We know what he is. Ryan Fitzpatrick is not going to come in here, the Miami Dolphins, and lead this team to the promised land. Best case scenario, they win 9 games, sneak in as a wild card, and get just dumped on by the Chargers in the first round of the playoffs. What good does that do you? You have to start Josh Rosen. Now, week 1, preseason, starter, Josh Rosen. So to come out here and get all cute and say that, oh, Ryan Fitzpatrick's probably our starter right now, all right, Brian Flores, whatever. I get that you're trying to inspire the guy to play better. But, man, that's what I'm looking at, is what does Josh Rosen look like? And is he the starter? And if he sucks this year, you have such a good opportunity. Because your team's not very good. You're going to be picking in the top 3 if Josh Rosen isn't good. You gave up basically nothing to get him. Literally nothing. Because you're not a win-now team. You got a second-round pick next year. You are in a perfect situation to start Josh Rosen and see what you have there. And they might not be doing that, which blows my mind. The Houston Texans, I think they had the best... I didn't love their draft. I didn't love the Houston Texans draft, but they had, in my mind, the best undrafted draft. They got 2 players that I could see one of them making an impact as a rookie, one of them just being a player in the future. The guy that I could see having a significant impact, and I have stealthily picked this guy up in all of my dynasty fantasy football leagues, Karan freaking Higden. And I had just the biggest smile on my face. I didn't tweet anything. There was no I told you so, but a lot of Texans fans kind of eating their dirt when Donta Foreman got released. Because 2 years here on this channel, on this podcast, probably not on this podcast, I've only had 15 of them. I said Donta Foreman can't play. Stiff. He is in Alex Collins, Chris Ivory. Good straight line power back. Doesn't catch the ball to the backfield. When he's on the field, you know you're running between the tackles. He's fine. He's not a guy that is ever going to start. And apparently he's lazy. They cut him. Now, the only reason you probably were excited about Donta Foreman is that they don't have a running back. They have Lamar Miller, who's fine. He's a starting caliber running back, but has never been anything close to elite. Like, I don't even have adjectives to describe him. He does everything okay. But he's older, really expendable at this point, has stayed healthy recently, but has had a history of injuries in his career. Then after him, they got nothing. Literally nothing. That's why you may have thought Foreman could do something. But they pick up a running back that I had a 5th round grade on, Karan Higden. He's a great athlete. Good stretch runner. Can catch the ball out of the backfield. I'm getting, flashbacks of Arian Foster, undrafted free agent here. Might not be as good as Arian Foster was, but Karan Higden, if you're at the end of your drafts for fantasy right now, whatever it may be, keep an eye on this guy. He's going to be a player. And then Jamal Davis is the other guy. I had a 3rd to a 4th round grade on him. He was a top 10 edge rusher for me. And I said he has probably the 2nd best get off. Clelin Ferrell's get off was really impressive coming out of Clemson. But this guy out of Akron, Ohio, he's 6'3", 240, about the same size as Yannick Ngakoue, who's a holdout right now, by the way. Never going to be a good run defender, never going to be a power rusher. He's a mismatch problem as an edge rusher. You bring him in on 3rd down, and you screw him off the edge. Now, I don't know if he's going to play here, because they got 3 guys, really, and Duke Ejiofor is a guy I liked last year. If he could stay healthy, he could play. But just keep an eye on Jamal Davis. He's a guy, if he had 3.5 sacks in the preseason and, got cut or something because they have so much depth, or he just was so good they had to get him on the field, keep an eye on him. Colts Deion Kane. There's just an obvious opportunity with this wide receiving core. They signed Devin Funchess. Whatever. I don't like Devin Funchess. He doesn't run good routes. He's got drop issues. Really poor awareness with his feet on the sidelines. He's whatever. He's a number 3 wide receiver. Paris Campbell's going to play, and you got T.Y. Hilton. But I think Deion Kane's a guy that could become something of a starter here. Really liked him coming out of Clemson. I don't know if he's going to have a huge year, but he's a guy that could carve out a future here this year. Getting on the field, playing a little more. Funchess is only on a 1-year deal. T.Y. Hilton's not getting any younger. Not a guy that is going to have a breakout season, 1,000 yards, but Deion Kane, just watch him in the preseason. And Jacoby Brissett as well. It's going to be fun to watch here. But Jacoby Brissett to Deion Kane could be one of the better preseason connections. So keep an eye on him. Did tear his ACL, I think, last year. So this is his rookie year. Deion Kane out of Clemson for the Colts. We got another wide receiver here for the Titans, A.J. Brown. I'm just interested to see what they do with this wide receiving core with their starting lineup because Corey Davis, a guy that I think could really emerge as a true number 1 this year. He's a really talented player. But you got Humphreys, Taywan Taylor, and now A.J. Brown, who are all better suited in the slot. And I'm just curious to see what he looks like, where they're using him, and just how he looks. I thought that was a good pick, getting A.J. Brown. He gives them a certain upside that they don't have with anyone on that roster outside of Corey Davis. And, A.J. Brown is his build is closer to Delaney Walker than it is to most wide receivers. A.J. Brown's 6'2", 230. I think Delaney is 6'3", 250. So, they're pretty similar builds. Delaney actually might be 6'2". But I like A.J. Brown, and he's going to play a good bit here in the preseason. Then we got the Jaguars. They have some holes now on this defense. The obvious one is Telvin Smith's spot as the number 2 linebacker here. He is stepping away for the year. Big loss for the Jags. So who's stepping up? Leon Jacobs was the third starter here. Freak athlete out of Wisconsin, but kind of converting. They're kind of doing the Anthony Barr thing with him. He was more of an edge rusher at Wisconsin. He had his moments last year, but he also had his weaknesses. And then they take Quincy Williams. They're a different kind of conversion. He's a 6'3", 220-pound safety that they're converting to linebacker. So do one of those guys win the linebacker job? Do they just go with Jake Ryan, who they signed from Green Bay? They need somebody to be a starting caliber player there, something we don't know if they have right now. Also keep an eye on the safety position. They let both of their starters from last year go, and they have some openings there at the free safety and strong safety. I'm keeping an eye on Andrew Wingard, undrafted free agent, I believe out of Wyoming or Montana. I think it was Wyoming. Good, smart player, physical guy. Curious to see if he can win a starting job there. So, moving to the AFC West, the Chargers, Artavis Scott. So Tyrell Williams is gone, and they are a team that runs a lot of 11 personnel. They're going to need a starter to step up. They also just cut Dylan Cantrell. Big news for the Artavis Scott truthers out there, which I do kind of consider myself one of them. He was a guy that, let's just put it this way. He took a lot of slot reps away from Hunter Renfrow there at Clemson. So he was the guy ahead of Hunter Renfrow. And he hasn't had much of an opportunity to really get on the field here. This could be it, to emerge as the slot guy for the Chargers. Just going to see how that plays out. They really don't have anyone after Mike Williams at wide receiver. I thought Dylan Cantrell was maybe going to be a guy they liked. Clearly not. They cut him. Raiders, Nathan Peterman, baby. I had him as the most underrated player on this Raiders team. He gets a lot of crap. People think he's the worst player in the NFL. He's not. He is a quality backup. I'm not even going to say he needs to develop into that. I think he can be a quality backup in this league. John Gruden likes this guy. And he's saying all the things I said about him in my underrated video. Yeah, he had some really crappy starts. But when you look into the reasons for why that happened, it doesn't take long to kind of make some really quality excuses for the guy. Rookie, terrible surrounding cast, going against some of the best defenses in the NFL, had just beat out Tyrod Taylor on a team that was making the playoffs. He's got a good arm. He's mobile. He can play. If we're sitting here in Week 16, the Raiders have 3 wins. Hell, Week 13, and the Raiders are eliminated because the Chiefs and the Chargers are so good. Maybe even Week 10. If John Gruden benches Derek Carr and starts Nathan Peterman, and he actually looks pretty good, and we're heading into next season wondering if Nathan Peterman is the starting quarterback of the Oakland Raiders, everyone's going to freak the heck out. Also, I'm trying to decide if I want to be PG-13 or what I want to do with this. For now, because we're on YouTube, I'll stay family friendly. But everyone's going to freak out. I'm calling it right now. I'm putting my foot down. The Raiders will enter next season with Nathan Peterman as their starting quarterback. People are going to be making jokes. And he might not be that bad. He's going to have a better offensive line. He's going to have Antonio Brown. Tyrell Williams can do some things. I like what they have there in the tight end out of LSU. Foster Moreau. Nathan Peterman, man. I'm excited to watch him, see if he can kind of get his confidence back. Exactly what John Gruden said. Chiefs, Darwin Thompson. Perfect comparison for him is another Thompson, Chris Thompson. Put that player with Andy Reid, who is better at designing screens than any play caller in the NFL. With all of the other threats on this offense, with the misdirection, Darwin Thompson is going to be, if he's as good as I think he is, another weapon for this offense. I'm excited to see what he looks like in a Chiefs jersey in the preseason. And then Broncos, I'm sorry if I'm shortchanging you, but this one's pretty easy. It's Drew Lock. can he just kind of don't be an idiot? And full disclosure, I didn't watch the Hall of Fame game. I never really do. I know it's the first game back, but usually it's third and fourth string guys by the second quarter, and I just got other things to do. Working on my Madden roster. Ain't got time for that. So maybe I'll go back and watch Drew Lock. I don't have any opinions on a game that I didn't watch, but I want to see him look competent, not make dumb mistakes. Don't look like Jay Cutler, which was a good college comp for you. Don't be forcing balls into double coverage against vanilla defenses against backups in the preseason. I want to see you, 6 of 10, 80 yards, touchdown or two, take care of the football. That's what I want to see from Drew Lock. I don't need to see him lighting dudes up, but I want to see you look competent. All right, on to the NFC. I might pick up the pace a little bit because we still got to do the mailbag, but we're doing all right. The Green Bay Packers, Oren Burks. That linebacker position is the biggest and really the only question mark outside of cornerback depth on the defense, because Blake Martinez is not good in coverage. He's a okay number 2, but they need a guy to emerge as that true 3-down linebacker. Oren Burks was a freak athlete out of Vanderbilt, like designed in a lab type of athlete, and 3rd-round pick last year. They need him to step up, and they have not invested in this position. In free agency and the draft, it's one of the biggest flaws of this Packers team, in my opinion, is their neglect for the linebacker position over the years, and God forbid they give Blake Martinez a contract extension. Like, you're just now seeing the light at the end of the tunnel with the Nick Perry and Jimmy Graham contracts. You do not want to, keep burying yourself in the dirt by paying Blake Martinez. So they need, and Martinez contract's up this year. They need, not just because they need him to be a good player, they need someone to wake them the heck up and say, that's what a linebacker looks like in 2019. That's what a linebacker that can flip his hips and cover a tight end looks like, or cover a running back out of the backfield. That's what that looks like. That's what a linebacker that can get in the backfield and make a tackle before, we just gave up 8 yards looks like. They need that. They need to open their eyes before they end up paying Blake Martinez $10 million. Because you can get Blake Martinez off the street. I'm sorry, you can. But for some reason, this team does not recognize that. For the Vikings, it's the slot wide receiver position. This, in my deep dive, was their second biggest question. Obviously, the offense. This team's going to flow as the offensive line flows. But you really aren't going to be able to get a good sense in the preseason for if the offensive line is ready. Teams aren't sending blitz schemes at you. It's vanilla defenses. I'm not going to get too excited if Kirk Cousins comes out for a few drives and gets good protection in the preseason. But I am keeping an eye on the number 3 weapon here, because Vikings have the best wide receiver duo in the NFL, most likely. But sometimes that doesn't matter against good coverages if you don't have a third option that can at least win a one-on-one matchup, which they didn't have last year. Laquan Treadwell's not that guy. So I'm keeping an eye on BB and BC, as I'm calling them, Chad Beebe and Olabisi Johnson. I loved BC Johnson. I had a 5th to a 6th round grade on him. He was like a poor man's Deontay Johnson, who we talked about earlier in the pod. Shorter guy, not the best hands, but really good short to intermediate route runner. I see him as a slot guy. He's big enough to play on the outside. But he's exactly what I described. You don't need a guy. You already have Thielen and Diggs to make ridiculous contested catches. You even have Kyle Rudolph to do that. You just need a guy that if they're going to double Thielen and double Diggs like they do a lot of the time, you need a guy that can beat the other team's slot corner or the linebacker or the safety, whoever it is. Rudolph's a decent pair of hands, but he is not an athlete that can separate like that. So you need a guy like BC Johnson, Chad Beebe, a guy that's been there for a couple years in the slot, or Dylan Mitchell. Another, BC and Mitchell were both 7th round picks. They actually took Mitchell ahead of BC, but I like BC more. Not a lot more. I think they're both good players. Or does Irv Smith start in the slot? He is pretty close to like A.J. Brown physically. He's 6'2", 240. He's close to a wide receiver size. So they've added some weapons there. They need someone to emerge. I'm excited to see who it's going to be for the Vikings. The Lions, there's a pretty deep defense at this point. The number 2 edge position, though, is a big question. I had mocked this team, Rashawn Gary, in the first round because, yeah, you have Trey Flowers, but they do need a number 2 edge presence there. They had an undrafted pickup in a guy named Malik Carney out of Northern Carolina. Now, they have, what's his name, the Notre Dame kid, as the number 2 edge guy there. He's fine. He's a replacement level starter. Malik Carney, my comparison for him was not Quan Alexander. Yikes. The Alexander for the Bills, who's had a really good late season. Lorenzo Alexander. Versatile edge guy, plays some outside, even off-ball linebacker. He is the definition of a Belichickian linebacker edge guy. Just versatile dude who can play as an end, hand in the dirt, outside the tackles, can drop off, cover. And that's the scheme here in Detroit. And I think Malik Carney is going to open some eyes there, especially with Patricia, the flexibility he wants with that defense. He's a guy that I think could get some starting reps there, and I'm excited to see what he brings to the table in the preseason. The Chicago Bears, this one was a little harder. I almost said Trubisky, but like we said, you really don't come away with a whole lot from the starting quarterbacks in the preseason. As long as they don't look miserable, you can't really, to me, garner a lot of hype. There's really not a whole lot to take away from your starting quarterback in the preseason. You just want to make sure they're running the show, not making mistakes, letting everything kind of progress forward, letting the other guys develop. But, the real show starts with the quarterbacks when the regular season starts. So it's not Trubisky for me, even though he is the biggest question mark for the season. I just put Riley Ridley because he was a 4th-round pick that I had a 1st-round grade on. He's probably not going to be the starter here this year no matter how well he plays because they've got weapons. But Taylor Gabriel probably not going to stick here. Allen Robinson, I think, has 1 more year left on his contract after this season. So a guy that could eventually come in there. Maybe it's Riley Ridley and Anthony Miller down the road. Philadelphia Eagles, I put Miles Sanders. Again, a pretty loaded roster, not a ton of question marks. But just excited to watch this guy. And really, can he win that starting job? Can he be the starting 3-down back? That's going to open up the ceiling for this offense if he can be the player they think he is as a 2nd-round pick. They got Jordan Howard there. He's fine. But, yeah, I'm keeping an eye on Miles Sanders. Then we have the Dallas Cowboys, again, the running back room here. Mike Weber, a 7th-round pick. Tony Pollard, a 4th-round pick. Zeke's holding out. He'll probably be there for camp, but sorry, I'm plugging my phone in here. Make sure that's not going to die on me here. Yeah, they need someone to be not a force there, but they need someone that can play and relieve Zeke a little bit. Because if you're going to be paying Zeke $16 million, which it sounds like they just might be, keep him healthy for the playoffs at least. And as big of a freak as you are, I don't think they want to give Zeke 300 carries in the regular season. It'd be dumb if they did. Use him in big games and stuff, but who's going to come in and, take over a drive or 2 every game? And I look at Mike Weber. What does he look like out of Ohio State, where Zeke came from? Not entirely unlike Zeke, just not as good of an athlete or as a receiver. And then they took Tony Pollard in the 4th round, but he's a better receiving back than a 3-down back. But they really do, honestly, would benefit from having an actual threat. They'd also just signed Alfred Morris. So are we really doing the Alfred Morris thing again? New York Giants, Daniel Jones, that's pretty self-explanatory. You spent a 6th overall pick on a guy that belonged in the 2nd. He better look good. And he's going to play in the preseason. Don't really need to spend much more time on that. The Redskins, I'm keeping an eye on the wide receiver battle there. You got Paul Richardson. He's the deep threat. But Crowder's out. He went to the Jets. So you really have two spots open there. So who's going to win those jobs out? Josh Dotson, his career is not over. He has not lived up to his expectations as a first-round pick, but he can play a little bit, getting some better quarterback play there with Dwayne Haskins. Maybe Josh Dotson can, at this point in his career, still resurrect this thing. But if not, you also got Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry. A third-round pick out of Ohio State. He's a bit of a burner. And then Kelvin Harmon, a bit of the opposite. Super solid hands. I had a first to a second-round grade on him. I cautiously compared him to Michael Thomas out of Ohio State. Similar type of player. Keep in mind, Michael Thomas was a second-round pick that I also really liked. I had a first to a second-round grade on Michael Thomas, too. Not saying it's going to happen, but I'm keeping an eye on those three guys. What does that situation look like there with Dwayne Haskins, who I do expect to start? All right, the Falcons, their biggest question mark to me is the secondary, mainly the number 2 corner. So I'm keeping an eye on Josh Oliver, second-year player out of Colorado. Does he win the number 2 corner job? Also, I'm curious to see who's starting in the nickel, because they had Ricardo Allen went down with injury. DeMonte Kazee came in and played really well at free safety. And either of those guys could play nickel corner. And they don't really have anyone on that roster that is fit to do that. So I'm just curious to see who's the starting safety and corner group for the Falcons, which is their biggest question mark. The Saints, we talked a lot about this in their deep dive. I'm looking at Marcus Davenport. What does he look like coming off of, healthy, had a foot injury, second year? I want to see him dominate in the preseason. And I also want to hear positive reports on Sheldon Rankins. I don't expect him to necessarily be back, but, I want to hear it's going well. He'll be back week 5, week 6. It's looking good. He's one of their best defensive players. Scary injury situation there. It was an Achilles. He's already had an injury history. The Saints, to me, have a really great offense, but it's not going to be the Chiefs. They're not going to win a Super Bowl scoring 35-plus points. I just don't think that that's who they are. They have really nice playmakers, good mismatch problems. It's a high-floor offense for sure. But if they want to win a Super Bowl, with Drew Brees at his age, I think they need to have an elite defense. And without Davenport playing like the elite prospect, elite ceiling prospect that he was, and Sheldon Rankins coming back healthy, I don't know if that pass rush is going to be good enough for it to be an elite defense. So I'm keeping an eye on those two players. The Panthers, this one could not be any more simple. What does Cam Newton's arm look like? Because, he wasn't Aaron Rodgers from last year, where he got hurt and then was slowly getting better every week. Or like Andrew Luck, where we hadn't even seen him play. We saw Cam Newton play on this injury, and his throwing mechanics were off, and his arm strength was not even close to what it once was. And they couldn't win a game. They couldn't throw the ball more than 10 yards. Watch I was saying it at the time. I saw him live in Cleveland, like week 13. It was obvious. It was bad. And this is the second offseason he's had surgery on his shoulder. This is a legitimate concern. So I want to see him back, throwing well. I want to see him fix that throwing mechanic, because it's leading to some weird accuracy issues. He's fine. He's still actually one of the smartest quarterbacks in the league and prepares more than pretty much anyone out there, but if he can't throw an accurate football more than 15 yards, that's going to seriously limit his upside as a player. So I want to see what his arm looks like on, yet again, a surgically repaired shoulder. The Buccaneers, just a lot of undrafted guys that I liked. Their safety situation's a mess, and they picked up a couple guys I liked in undrafted free agency, Lucas Dennis and Dakota Dixon, so I'm keeping an eye on them. Can they win jobs on this roster and become players here? And then the running back room, we really hit on Ronald Jones. I had a 3rd to a 4th round grade on him. A lot of people were mocking him in the first round last year. They took him almost in the first. He was like the 36th pick in the draft. Maybe not that high, but it was high. It was early second round. He can't play. They have the Barber kid. He's fine. Replacement level starter. Bruce Anderson, not going to say he's David Johnson, but coming out of that smaller school, some flashes, really good straight line runner, some power, can catch the ball out of the backfield. Shares, he's another Bruce A. Maybe Bruce Arians will slide him a little benefit of the doubt. Obviously not serious, but keep an eye on Bruce Anderson. Can he win some starting reps there? The same way that Peyton Barber did as an undrafted guy. Last division here, we have the San Francisco 49ers. I'm excited to see who's lining up where with these wide receivers. They kind of went overkill on the slot wide receiver type because they had Dante Pettis, then they took Deebo Samuel, then they took Jalen Hurd, they got George Kittle, they have Marquise Goodwin who's a good outside threat, but I'm curious to see where Shanahan's lining these guys up and how they look with a healthy Jimmy Garoppolo. That's the other thing. I'm just excited to see Jimmy Garoppolo on his feet throwing the football around, preparing to shock the world. Seattle, this one was easy. DK Metcalf. I just want to see him in a pro uniform. I want to see him win that number 2 job. I want to see him prove why he belonged in the first round, not the second. And I don't want to see him look lackadaisical. I don't want to see him getting beat out by David Moore, who's a fine player, but DK Metcalf has no excuse to let David Moore be the number 2 wide receiver here. So excited to see that. Arizona, again, pretty obvious. Kyler Murray. Just want to see him play football again. He's electric, incredibly accurate, underrated arm. I've not shied away from saying that he can be better than Russell Wilson in that division. Not as a rookie, but by year 3. With some good weapons, a good offensive coach. I'm very high on this man. I'm excited to watch him play in the NFL. Simply put. And then the Rams, the last team here. Really the thing I'm watching is the Todd Gurley situation, the running back room. How does Darrell Henderson look? How does Mac Brown? Mac Brown? Is that right? I think that's right. Something Brown. They gave him an extension this offseason. And also my guy, John Kelly. I want to see those guys. How do they look? Does Gurley play in the preseason? If he does, how explosive does he look? That's all very interesting to me. I've said that Darrell Henderson is not a bad bet for Offensive Rookie of the Year, 25-1. I threw a little change on that. So excited to watch the running back room. And then also Gerald Everett. He's kind of a breakout candidate for me. I think he can play a lot. He's kind of similar to Jordan Reed. Really good athlete. Obviously, McVay had Jordan Reed in his prime, really, in Washington. So can he be a full-time starter here, take away all those reps that they give to Tyler Higbee, who's not a bad player but doesn't have the upside of a Gerald Everett? So can Everett really come out and dominate in the preseason and take all the reps with the ones? I do have my eye on that because he could be a weapon that this team doesn't necessarily need, but could obviously supplement some of the losses that they might have with a decreased Todd Gurley. So time to open up the mailbag. You guys are awesome. Shooting these questions to me on Twitter. We're going to try and rip through these. We got plenty of time. So Joey Wright, long-time subscriber. What's up, Joey? Trade destinations for Melvin Gordon. What would you give up for him and what would you pay him? Like we said earlier in the show, the Chargers have very little incentive to trade him. If you can get a second-round pick, I'd do it. But a third-round pick, the teams that would trade for him probably not giving up, or probably not bad teams. You're probably looking at a late third-round pick, most likely. What's the point of that? If I can get a second, I'd do it because you got running backs in place. But if I'm not getting more than that, I'm just saying, you know what? We'll take our chances that he folds and comes in and plays. So teams that would then be willing to pay a second-round pick and pay him over $10 million because the reports are the Chargers are offering Melvin Gordon $10 million. So you got to say, all right, we're going to pay $13-14 million, like a $70 million contract. Now, maybe 30 guaranteed, but I don't know a whole lot of teams that are doing that. Not a whole lot of teams need running backs because it's such a replaceable position. We saw the market for a $16 million running back, and there was two teams, the Baltimore Ravens and the New York Jets, that were interested in Le'Veon Bell. The Jets got him, and the Ravens signed Mark Ingram. So those teams are out. The only team, a lot of people think Indianapolis, Green Bay, those teams aren't paying a running back that much money. Not when they're paying their quarterbacks what they're making. Indianapolis is too smart to pay a running back that much, too. Houston is the only team that really would make any sense to me. Maybe whoever is making the executive decisions there, whether it's Bill O'Brien or whoever is in charge, I don't think they have an active general manager. The problem with that is Deshaun Watson's contract is not that far away. You are paying J.J. Watt. He did not slow down last year. If anything, J.J. Watt's going to want an extension, not a guy you're going to cut. Jadeveon Clowney almost certainly would need to go if you got Melvin Gordon. You also are paying DeAndre Hopkins. It's a lot of stars to pay. And they have a lot of holes on that roster to fill out. I don't necessarily know if that makes sense. They're the only team really that does need a running back that is trying to win now, that actually has the cap space to make it happen this year. Obviously, there's a lot of teams like Tampa, Miami that need running backs, but I wouldn't do it if I were them. I really can't think of a team that would trade a second-round pick and then pay him that money other than Houston. So let's move on. This is from Logan. If every NFL team had a good starting quarterback, what would happen to the top quarterback draft prospects? So that's a good question. And let's look at next year's class. We have Tua from Herbert, maybe Jordan Love from Utah State. All borderline, first-round prospects. I tend to be a little lower on Tua. He's got the best receivers we've seen in a long time in college, has injury questions, doesn't have a cannon arm, he's a lefty. He's not a perfect prospect by any standards. He's incredibly accurate. Good player, probably the number one quarterback, but who knows. So let's just say that Jameis resurrects his career, that Mariota resurrects his career. Those two teams are set. That Derek Carr is killing it in Oakland with Antonio Brown. That's all in the realm of possibilities. If Mariota stays healthy, if Bruce Arians helps Jameis and Derek Carr can figure it out again, those all could happen. Let's say Josh Rosen looks really good in Miami. That's a little less likely. If those four get settled, maybe you got Baltimore, Chicago, could be looking at quarterbacks. But let's say Lamar, a lot of things would have to go right. But let's say Baltimore wins 9-10 games and Lamar Jackson doesn't suck. Trubisky, Blake Bortles his way to another 10-win season in Chicago, and they have no incentive to move on. Tom Brady's still kicking. Drew Brees still kicking. Phillip Rivers still kicking. Big Ben's still kicking. Like, there's going to be openings if you can't get the vibe there. But let's say all of that happens and literally no one has any interest in a quarterback. The earliest you'd probably see would be like the Pittsburgh, New England, Green Bay, Chargers. Those teams with the old quarterbacks would jump on that. New England would be like, we'll take Jake Fromm. Yeah, we'll take Jake Fromm and develop him under Tom Brady. Thanks, the rest of the NFL. The Steelers would be like, Herbert's the next Big Ben for us. Boom. So that could be the scenario. I don't think that happens. I think Baltimore's looking for a quarterback next year. I think Tennessee, Mariota is his hours are running short there. If he gets hurt again, Tennessee's going to be looking at a quarterback. I don't think Josh Rosen, as much as I've applauded them for doing that and as much as I thought that was a steal to get him, he's just a guy that needs help, and they don't have the help there for him. That offensive line is going to be the worst in the NFL probably. I think Miami, Baltimore, and Tennessee are leading the charges, maybe Oakland, depending how Derek Carr looks. Those teams are leading the charge for teams that will be looking for quarterbacks next year. And maybe like the Saints if Drew Brees retires. Biggest fantasy football sleepers. Well, I mean, Karan Higden. I mean, depends how deep you're talking here. I think Equanimeous St. Brown for the Packers is going to win the number 2 receiver job. I think he is miles better than both Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Geronimo Allison, who the public perception would say those guys are better. I completely disagree. And if you can get the number 2 wide receiver for Aaron Rodgers with freak athleticism as basically an undrafted guy, I think he's a good sleeper. Just kind of spitballing here. Can't really think of any right now off the top of my head. I mean, I think Chris Godwin's going to have a great year there in Tampa. I don't know what round he's going in, but if he's like a 7th round pick right now, I think he's going to be a top 12 wide receiver next year. I'll leave with those. Darrell Henderson. I want Darrell Henderson because I don't think Todd Gurley's going to play much in the regular season for the Rams. Who's the rookie who will exceed their draft position most this year? Blake Cashman is allowed as an answer. All right. It's Mahomes season. Blake Cashman. I've been meaning to ask you what made you want to become a YouTuber and talk about football. Well, about my sophomore year of college, which would have been 2014, I decided that I wanted to try working in sports and did some sports business jobs, took a job with the Minnesota Timberwolves, decided that I didn't really love the sports business end, that if I was going to work in sports business, I might as well just work in business because the hours are better and it pays better. But I did want to give a crack at the sports side of sports. And I had done writing for fansided.com. Good place to get your foot in the door, just kind of get some work out there. I did some broadcasting and an internship in between all that stuff we were talking about earlier. But when I graduated in 2016, it's a competitive industry. I was actually working valet. I applied for a part-time job with PFF. I got that. That was actually almost a year after I graduated. I kind of took a year. But in that year between the valet and college, I just started making videos on YouTube. I had already been doing my roster for Madden. Noticed that you can have a description there, so I started advertising that I'm talking about the roster on YouTube, and just kind of slowly grew and got to where we're at now. And never thought that little pet project would get here, but I knew that that's where my passion was. And they say, don't just do what you want to love, but do what you're good at. And I feel like this was kind of my calling, so I just kind of went for it, and it's worked out to this point. Thanks to you guys. From Noam, Noam, is Jair Alexander due for an excellent sophomore campaign? How does he stack up against other corners in the NFC North? I do think that Jair Alexander, in his second season, with a significantly improved pass rush there in Green Bay, they were one of the 5 worst pass rushes in the NFL last year. Jair also had some of the worst safety play to help him and was like the only healthy corner outside of Josh Jackson. So he's going to have a lot more help this year. So yeah, I do think he can be a top 15 corner this year. He's one of the best man corners in the league already. And he's only going to get smarter as a zone guy. Definitely going to benefit from a better surrounding core. How does he stack up against other corners in the NFC North? Well, Darius Slay is one of the 3 best corners in the league. Jair could get there. I don't think he will in his sophomore season. I would rather have Jair Alexander than Xavier Rhodes, personally. Rhodes is a good player. He's good at what he does, but he's grabby, not much of a man defender. Really good in press. If you put Rhodes in like Seattle or San Francisco or Jacksonville with that scheme that has led to success with guys like Richard Sherman, then Xavier would be dominant. But unfortunately, he's not very versatile. You don't want him going horizontal too much. Good vertical cover guy. And then Kyle Fuller's a really good player too. Fuller is kind of just more of a balanced guy. So, I think right now he's the third best corner in the NFC North. All four of those teams have good number one corners. Can the Chargers actually put it together and win a Super Bowl before Phil retires? They're going to be playing in the new Rams Stadium next year, right? That they need a home field advantage and an offensive line. One or the other. Before I can say they can win a Super Bowl. I love them this year. They're going to be a great regular season team, but when it gets to playoff football, you got to realize there's a huge difference between regular season and playoff football. The Chargers are not built for playoff football. They don't have an offensive line. They can't travel, and they don't have a home field advantage. Those are massive pieces. So, if they can get a home field advantage inside the new Rams Stadium, or if they can over the next couple of years develop a guy like a Forrest Lamp, the kid they took in like the fourth round this year, can't think of his name, if those guys turn into players, and they can get an offensive line there for Phillip Rivers, then we'd be talking. I think they win 11 or 12 games again this year, but ultimately probably fall short to a team like Indianapolis or New England, who's much more built for playoff football. Do I expect Kyler to surprise a lot of people with his athleticism and throwing the ball deeper into the season? I think he surprises people right away. I think he's a lock for the offensive rookie of the year. Right now you can get him at like 3-1. I already have. I've been saying it since January when people thought he was going to play baseball. The guy he's special. He's one of the top 5 graded rookie quarterbacks since I've been doing this. He's there with Darnold. He's ahead of Baker for me. I wasn't high on Baker, but, I think he's going to be really special. He's accurate, eludes pressure, killer instincts, super fast, quick. Arizona's not that far away from being a legitimate playoff contender. They need an offensive line, but the beauty of Kyler is he can elude pressure and create plays when you don't have an offensive line. So that's going to buy them some time to get an O-line. From William McCready, team to have a fall-off year or bounce-back year. Well, my fall-off team this year is the Rams and the Ravens, just because Lamar isn't as good as people think. But, the Rams they've lost some pieces. They need to develop a counterpunch with Jared Goff and that offense that I don't know if they have. I don't think they're a bad team, but if the Rams won 8 or 9 games and fell short, and we started to wonder what Jared Goff's future is looking like, that wouldn't really surprise me. Bounce back year, I think the Green Bay Packers are a team that had so many things go wrong. You have questions about Matt LaFleur, but Mike McCarthy was their coach for the last decade. No matter how bad Matt LaFleur is, it's going to be really hard for that to not be an upgrade. They're healthy on both sides of the ball. You are getting the best quarterback in football back healthy. You have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. You are set to have a great pass rush now. Your secondary is much improved. I think Green Bay is the obvious bounce back year pick. Has Clowney reached his ceiling? that's a tough question because Clowney's ceiling as an athlete is the best pass rusher in the NFL. For whatever reason, he's never really developed the skill set to get there. He's an awesome power rusher. He's got some finesse moves, but he doesn't have too many counter moves. He moves around so much too. I don't know if he's reached his ceiling, but I also don't think he'll ever be better than he is right now, if that makes sense. So I guess, yeah, he's reached his ceiling. Do I think the NFL could go back to being centered around running the ball, or will it just become more of a passing league? No, I don't think we're ever going back. Quarterbacks are better coming out of college. The rules are much preferable to passing the ball. It's the analytics now. It's an analytically driven league, and the analytics tell you that running the ball is can't come up with the word, but it's less favorable to your win probability every time you run the ball as opposed to passing the ball. Yeah, I don't see it going back ever to being a running league. You will see teams that are able to become running teams like New England. The teams that have really good offensive lines, which is a rarity, will still run the ball. The Cowboys. But no, it's never going to be a running league again. I think you will see teams that can take advantage of certain things with how the league is going smaller, but I don't ever see the entire league as a whole going in that direction because, number one, we spent a lot of time talking about how there's a lot of good, big interior defensive linemen. Stopping the run is just easier. Getting corners is harder. So by nature, most teams are going to attack you through the air for all of the reasons we've said. But also just building an offensive line is harder. So, no, I don't think we'll ever go back. Aiden's asking about the Ravens pass rushers. We kind of talked about them earlier. Sorry, Aiden. Love you, but I'm going to skip that. Do I have any game of the year predictions? Go with, I think Eagles and Cowboys have like a classic. Could see that. They got to have a Sunday night game, right? Just a random prediction there. There's going to be a lot of good games this year. Here's another Jair Alexander question about his ceiling. I think he'll be a top 10 guy this year and could honestly be top 3 a few years down the line. Yeah, that sounds about right. Jair Alexander has a very high ceiling. He's one of the best athletes in the NFL. Just amazing speed and quickness. And instincts. He's a physical corner, too. He really has it all. The sky is the roof for Jair Alexander. Which coaches and GMs are on the hot seat? Who could be fired during the season if it doesn't go well? There's a lot of vibes around Mike Zimmer with Minnesota last year, and I think Zimmer's a top 3 defensive mind. But with the way the league is going, and the way he's been kind of stubborn, he spent this whole offseason saying like, we're going to run the ball more. Well, it's not a running league anymore, and your team, frankly, is not built to run the ball. You have one running back who can't stay healthy. You have a garbage offensive line. You have the best wide receiver duo in the NFL, though, and a quarterback that is cannon for an arm. You should not be trying to run the ball more. And just in general, if you're a defensive coach, you shouldn't be taking over the offense like that. If the Vikings started 3-7, not likely, but they're a team. I could see Zimmer and then very quickly getting hired as a defensive coordinator because he knows what he's doing on that side of the ball. Maybe even as another head coach. I don't know. Who else? Zach Taylor in Cincinnati. Can really say the same thing about Matt LaFleur too. If either of those teams have like train wreck seasons, like those guys were just kind of desperation hires. Like, LaFleur's going to have a much easier job because he's working with Aaron Rodgers and a better offensive line, and he has Devontae Adams, but both those teams could be like, you know what, this was a bad hire, and can him pretty quick. I don't really have any GMs currently on the hot seat. I mean, Tampa Bay, what's his name? Matt Light? Is that Tampa? He's had some rough off seasons. How do I feel about Jadeveon Clowney not signing the franchise tag? Should they trade him or should Clowney hold out? That's a tough situation. Like, Clowney's not worth, to me, he's not worth $20+ million. Clowney to me is he's like that. He's closer to like what Zadarius Smith got, right? Like a $15 million player. He's fine. He's a good power rusher. You can drop him into coverage, versatile dude. But he's not DeMarcus Lawrence. He's not even Frank Clark. If I were him, sign the tag, play it out, go get paid in free agency. The Texans probably should trade him, though. I don't think you're going to get an offensive lineman because I don't know who's trading offensive linemen, but get a pick that will help you get an offensive lineman in the future. The Texans' defense would be fine without Clowney. I do believe that. And they're going to lose him eventually, so if you can get a pick for him, why not? I would definitely be thinking about it if I was Houston. I don't know who would trade for him, though, at this point. I'm sure someone would. Everyone needs well, not everyone, but a lot of teams need pass rushers. Here's another fantasy football question. I'm going to skip that, Will. Sorry. Team with the most boom or bust potential from Alex. I feel like it's got to be the Green Bay Packers again there. The 49ers have a lot of boom or bust potential too. Arizona. All NFC teams that I'm thinking of. Are there any head coaches fired in the last few years that deserve another chance? One guy that I think is due for another head coaching job is Jim Schwartz, defensive coordinator for the Eagles. He had, he wasn't great for Detroit, and defensive-minded coaches are never going to be on the top of anyone's list, but he's done a really good job there in Philadelphia. I'm sure he's learned some things as well. It's not like he was handed the gold standard there in Detroit. So, I like Jim Schwartz. I think he deserves a coaching job somewhere. Here's another Packers question. A lot of Packers questions here. With King always injured and Jackson not being very good, do you think cornerback will be as big of a need for the Packers as linebacker heading into the 2020 offseason? Look, I like Josh Jackson coming out. He wasn't as good as Jair, but he's got to be better than he was last year, right? I mean, he wasn't miserable either. He was fine. He had his moments. But I mean, you also got to mind they had no pass rush, no safety help over the top. They had Kentrell F. and Bryce playing safety. They're going to now have Adrian Amos and a safety in the first round that I loved in Darnell Savage. So I'm not giving up on Josh Jackson by any means. Kevin King, you're right, can't stay healthy. Corner depth is going to be a need. And yeah, linebacker, they cannot pay Blake Martinez. The Green Bay Packers cannot pay Blake Martinez a contract extension. You just let Jake Ryan walk, who's a better player. So you cannot now go and pay Blake Martinez. You can find free agents that are twice the player Blake Martinez is for probably half the price. That would be a colossal mistake by Gutekunst. Do I think New England's a possible trade destination for Trent Williams? The Redskins said they're not trading him, and I believe that. Like, the Redskins front office is not miserable. They've had some pretty good moments. The ownership's a question mark. They've had some questionable signings, but like, they know that trading Trent Williams is a lose-lose situation for your team. I tweeted that out when there was reports about that. It's like, if they do, that's the typical, the rich eat from the poor type of situation. If they just traded Trent Williams for a fourth-round pick. A lot of fans of contending teams are sitting there praying to God it happens. The Redskins would be really dumb. And it's not like the Redskins are screwed, right? Like, they have a chance this year. I don't think the smart people in the football world are writing the Redskins off. All right, I'm going to do one more here. This was sent to me on Instagram. You can also send me DMs on Instagram, Whitman_Marcus. This is a question about the injuries to Jonah Williams, AJ Green, from B Money. What should the Bengals do, basically, is the question. We talked a little bit about the Bengals. They're a mess. And they're another team we should have mentioned they could be looking for a quarterback. I was optimistic about them. I ranked them pretty high. I had them like 22nd in my power rankings. I thought the offensive line would be better. Got good receivers. Underrated defense with a lot of young players. And that defense is still going to be pretty good this year, but probably not good enough to carry that offense. I like Joe Mixon. But they're kind of rudderless with the things that have happened this offseason. It hurts me to say it, but I think trading AJ Green might be the best course of action. You could probably get a second-round pick back for him. Although maybe not. Maybe it's a third or a fourth for AJ Green. And Cordy Glenn, maybe a guy that you trade because he's getting older. It's just rough. Maybe you even trade Andy Dalton. I don't know who would want to trade for Andy Dalton, but I think you do have to blow everything up. And that sucks for Zach Taylor that he just took this job because he's going to be in a really tough spot. He's going to have to do an incredible coaching job to not be on the hot seat after 1 year there. He's a young guy, was really inexperienced, and he just got handed a full plate. So that is going to do it. It's really good to be back. I love doing these podcasts. You guys are great. For now, I am going to upload this to YouTube. And if you're listening to this on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, it's not going to make it on SoundCloud, I don't think. But leave a review. Tell your friends too. That's really the best way to spread this thing, to help me out. You're talking football. You think that I make you understand some things about football. Tell your friends. They listen to podcasts. Tell them, hey, this YouTuber started a podcast, the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. You can get it on Spotify. It's great. Leave a review. Use promo code Franchise Guy on SeatGeek. Hit the like button on YouTube. You can become a patron. Patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy. We're doing 2 film breakdowns two film breakdowns of quarterbacks a month right now. We do have a stretch goal to get to 4. Got other benefits there as well. That's it. That's the show. Not much of a show. There's not much to really look at. It's just me talking. But cheers as always, guys. Have a good night. Peace.